Welcome back, everyone. This is Mo Al-Sumidai with the Clinical Trial Vanguard, and I'm here with Pinar Bénet, who is the Senior Director of GTM Strategy and Clinical Lead at Veeva Systems. Such a great conference you're hosting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It's actually thanks to the sponsors and the CROs and our partners, SI partners who have joined.
Yeah,
So-
the Clinical Oversight Forum really had a lot of interesting discussions. I want to go back to the R3 because that was a key message here that we're talking about. And you guys just recently did a white paper on the frame that really frames R3 as like transforming oversights, right? From like retrospective reviews to continuous predictive data-driven accountability, right? So given that R3 now defines essential records, right? That's a big discussion topic. And to include that into operational data, comms, metadata, not just documents. How are you helping sponsors distinguish between data noise and meaningful oversight evidence in highly digital outsourced environments?
So this is an excellent question. In the first place, what is important is that the sponsors will need to have the timely data. If they do not have timely data, they cannot actually to act on the data. So this is number one. Hence, what we do as Veeva is that if the sponsors are fully outsourced, we actually equip their CROs with a bridge called CTMS transfer to be able to deliver the operational oversight data to the sponsor CTMS environment for oversight purposes, so that they will get the data. They can actually conduct the risk-based oversight as you mentioned. So this is not one thing that we do. The other thing we do, I think, is quite interesting, especially for sponsors who would like to own their data a little bit more for oversight purposes. Beyond just getting operational data, they can actually in-house their data management system as well. And we see more and more of that in the market. What I mean by that is that sponsors are bringing their data management in-house, but they outsource everything else to their CROs. So they're still heavily outsourced, but actually they want to control their data and standards, so that these are how we help. And why Veeva is an optimal partner to be able to bring the systems in-house, because it's the most modern application. It's very modular, it's very configurable, scalable. The user interface is very simple. So if you're a sponsor who have never touched EDC before and you would like to get more oversight, it is a perfect tool, so to speak, to learn, because your learning curve will not be as steep as the legacy solutions.
Mm-hmm. So, Pinar, R3 pushes sponsor towards proactive quality by design rather than like the reactive quality assurance. And we kind of touched on that a little bit, but yet many biopharmas still operate through rigid SOP hierarchies, static oversight plans. So from your vantage point, what organizational biases or legacy mindsets most hinder that cultural shift? And how can sponsors dismantle those?
That's an excellent question. And so my take on it is the fact that the industries in general, not only pharma, we used to operate more in a waterfall manner. So we will do step one, we will then go to step two, then we will do step three, etc. So it's more linear logic. This logic is also transcribed in the software, in the legacy software. So what it means is that it doesn't allow the sponsor to be able to be agile, right? It doesn't. So what does agility mean? It means actually collaborating with other departments on the same databases or workflows, but also it doesn't allow for amendments, changes. So basically the mindset shift that has to happen is between the from waterfall to going to more agile way of working. And agile way of working also requires agile systems to work on. So it is difficult to work agile if you have a legacy system that is there to be able to facilitate a waterfall process. So I think that's the biggest shift, because the moment the sponsor makes the shift to be able to be collaborative with their CROs or across their departments, or if they would like to, for instance, amend their studies and make it available to the sites very quickly, their electronic data capture, then I think this helps them to be able to stick to more the quality by design principles, so to speak. Yeah. So to be more proactive, because you need a fast system to be proactive. Because in a waterfall system, it's very hard to be fast because you have to do everything from scratch if you were to do anything. So hence it means database migrations when you have amendments. I think if you have one amendment, it's okay. But now we discussed today in the room, on average, the amendments are between 10 and 15. So that is what we are addressing today.
And a lot of sponsors and vendors sort of like over-engineer compliance to prove to regulators that they're being compliant. So how can sponsors balance regulatory defensibility with R3's sort of intent for proportional quality management without creating bureaucratic and organizational drag?
So this is an excellent question, because we discussed that the sponsors have to have proportionate actions. Yeah. So basically what it means is it's not necessarily doing more or spending more, but it is doing things where it matters. So basically now the sponsor, instead of saying, whenever we have this type of study, these are the X, Y, Z we are going to do, they will actually have to take a step back and evaluate each study individually to be able to come up with a risk-based plan. Of course, the other studies can inspire them, but it has to be very much personalized for a given study, and they have to make their plan according to the risk that the clinical research will entail. What it also means is that they will have to invest in some areas more than other areas, or less in some areas, but in totality they may still spend the same amount of money. But what is for sure is they should not repeat the same thing for all studies over and over again. So in this case, I think what R3 managed to do well, in my opinion, is that it actually forces the sponsor to make a decision. So they actually have to evaluate and define what is appropriate to them. They cannot just be on autopilot and repeat everything that they have done before to the next studies.
So Pinar, R3's emphasis on data governance integrates metadata, audit trails, real-time system validation into sponsor oversight. And as you develop connected platforms, how do you reconcile sponsors' demand for transparency with CROs' concerns over data ownership? And that was a big discussion today, like access rights, data ownership, and system interoperability. And I know that you guys recently did a deal with IQVIA about this, right?
So I cannot comment on the IQVIA partnership because it is evolving day after day. But I think when it comes to enabling sponsors and CROs in this ecosystem, what is important is that the sponsor should be able to trace the data lineage across the systems that data travels. And if these systems are the sponsor systems, then they will have more control. And if these systems are the CRO systems, then what they need is to find a standard way of getting this data on a timely basis. So for this effect, Veeva has Veeva CTMS transfer, which actually enables the operational oversight data to come from the CROs to sponsors on a daily basis. So you mentioned IQVIA, although the partnership is evolving every day. It is our intention is that all the CROs that operate with the sponsors we are serving actually use Veeva CTMS. This would only be in the best interest of the sponsors to be able to get timely feedback. Definitely there can be integrations between the CRO and the sponsor systems, but these remain to be highly complex, costly, and eventually very risky.
And the white paper, it suggests a fully outsourced sponsors face the greatest inspection risk under R3. And what would you say are the most misunderstood aspects of continuous oversight among these sponsors? And where are you seeing some of the biggest disconnect between contractual delegation and real-world control?
So your question is more about where is the disconnect between the CROs or sponsors?
My question is around, perhaps I can rephrase the question.
Please.
So the white paper identifies that there is a risk for fully outsourced.
Correct.
Right. When it comes to the understanding of this guidance, when it comes to understanding R3, where are you seeing the biggest disconnect?
I see. So what I see is, I would not call it a disconnect, but more the sponsors understand and hear the words. They hear continuous, risk-based, proportionate, right? And recorded oversight. So they hear all these things. But what is missing is concrete examples of how they can actually execute. And what is actually missing is standard way of approaching oversight. Because if there's a standard way of doing things, then it will be easier for sponsors to actually replicate this approach. Obviously, study by study, they will have to still personalize the approach. But I think the industry standard is missing. And this is one of the reasons why this community is trying to do is to build a community to be able to define our approaches and to codify into Veeva clinical platform, be it clinical operations in Veeva CTMS, ETMF, study training or site connect, or Veeva clinical data management applications, more EDC, CDB, RTSM, and EQA. So our goal is to get the inspiration as well to be able to further enhance our applications.
And so in R2 and in R3, the ICH keeps emphasizing a culture of quality, okay? And what that means specifically, not just in clinical operations, but everyone has a mandate to improve quality, to be a part of this continuous culture to improve quality throughout the organization. And so how do you see digital platforms enabling this cross-functional accountability? And what risks do you foresee if sponsors fail to institutionalize that culture of quality?
I see. I think quality to me, it's a function of accountability, meaning that I'm a strong believer of teamwork. And I do believe that the moment people have access to the work of others, and if they can actually collaborate, then the quality would need to improve because you will need to justify yourself vis-a-vis your colleagues. You can get new ideas from your colleagues, and you can also try to achieve the same quality outcomes together. What every function does may be slightly different. So when it comes to what Veeva does to be able to facilitate, I think this is your second part of the question, is that Veeva Clinical Platform is a connected and unified platform. Basically what it means is that if you have the right security and access rights, you are able to gain access to the processes, data, and documents immediately to be able to collaborate with your other colleagues on the same objectives.
Pinar, Bénet, everyone, thank you so much for joining us, Pinar.
Thank you very much, Mo. It was my pleasure.